Lagos, Nigeria's economic hub, continues to struggle with a housing crisis that affects millions of its residents. With a housing deficit estimated at over 3 million units, skyrocketing rents, and exploitative landlord practices, many tenants find themselves vulnerable in a system that often lacks strong enforcement of their rights. The Lagos State Tenancy Law was introduced to regulate the landlord-tenant relationship, ensuring fair treatment and preventing arbitrary rent hikes or illegal evictions. However, despite these legal protections, disputes between landlords and tenants remain rampant, with many Lagosians unaware of their legal standing, as that piece just showed to us. A critical concern is the accessibility of affordable housing. With high demand and low supply in Lagos, landlords often take advantage of desperate tenants, demanding outrageous rent advances and imposing unfair conditions. The government has made efforts to mitigate these challenges, but as always, enforcement remains weak. While the tenancy law aims to create a balanced framework, its effectiveness in resolving disputes and protecting tenants from undue hardship is still widely debated. The question remains, is the law robust enough to address Lagos' worsening housing deficit, or does it require urgent reforms?
So, to provide clarification on the legal landscape of tenancy laws in Lagos and their impact on the city's housing, we have with us Mr. Gabriel Udwafi. He's a legal practitioner. He'll be giving us those details that most people inside of that little piece did not know. And of course, we have Mr. Osagie Alfred. He's an estate surveyor and also senior partner at West Norwood Realities. You're welcome, gentlemen. Thank you very much for coming through.
It's good to thank you. Good morning.
Mr. Osagie, let's start with you. First of all, let's get a scope of exactly what you do and where you're from.
Okay, thank you for having me here. I'm an estate surveyor and valuer. I started off as starting my tutelage with an estate surveying and valuation firm with John Zedomi and Associates. So, as an estate surveyor and valuer, what you do is you assist to manage and optimize the investment in landed properties. So, we value assets, and if you are valuing assets, you must understand the entire value chain of the real estate industry in terms of production to the process of managing, to the process of occupancy, the laws around the industry. So it has to do with management, it has to do with valuation, it has to do with sales, it has to do with rentals, it has to do with advisory. Someone having a land and doesn't know what to do about it, and even the point of helping to mediate, because I'm a chartered mediator with the RICS London. If there are disputes, how do you try to manage the situations? Because in summary, I would just say that the landlord and tenant relationship that property managers try to manage is to mediate that relationship. It's not supposed to be skewed towards just the landlord or towards the tenant. You must create a balance as a professional. Thank you.
So let me ask regarding the Lagos tenancy laws now. In your experience, do you find that most tenants or people who actually are renting these houses have no idea or maybe some idea of the Lagos tenancy law?
So the law is there, and something about the law is ignorance of the law is not an excuse. But people are busy with other things, and there's always the place of sensitization, reminder that this law exists, this is what it's supposed to be for, and the process. So, but what I found out is that a lot of people are very in a hurry. They're always in a hurry to rent the place. So it's at a point where rent is almost due and they want to change apartments. 1 month, 2 weeks, I need to move. At that point, you can never make the best of decisions. When I wanted to move from a particular place, I had planned 2 years before that it's time for me to move, because housing is a major cost of your income. So it should take a strategic position in your planning. And in that process, it means that you don't just wake up and say you want to move. So you then find a situation where people just want to jump in and say, okay, I want this property, I want this property. And with that, you don't get to interact with the property you are seeing from the side of the law and even from the quality of the housing you are seeing. So I must say in conclusion that some people have an idea, but some people, because they are in a hurry, they don't interact in their minds with that law, or two, they don't even carry along a legal practitioner, an estate surveyor and valuer to advise them as they go along.
I mean, ignorance is not an excuse. He just echoed my thoughts watching our perspective earlier. What are the list that tenants should know about this law to protect themselves?
For me, I think taking off from where he stopped and listening to very well-spoken Nigerian citizens, Lagos citizens, I'm still in shock that in spite of the availability of information at the tips of our fingers, a lot of people still remain largely ignorant about the happenings around them. The Lagos Tenancy Law, if you just go to your Google search and you put it there, the gazetted copy will come up and you'll be able to, it's about 48 sections. It's one of the shortest law that can take you, if you are not a lawyer, to pay attention to the details. It can take you a minimum of 30 minutes. You are ready from the beginning to the end. So if you then have questions, you can then engage lawyers. Like you said, we have a hush-hush approach to issues of our lives. I am a tenant, right? And I've been a tenant in Lagos for God knows how long. Each time I want to move, I always leave my old house in excess of my rent. My first house when I was living, I had 7 months rent outstanding. Because I needed to move, I wanted to move. Because my condition had improved. My landlord was not ready to effect the changes I wanted, which I suggested. I offered to bear the cost, but he said, no, if you do it, you do it. And I know that what I wanted to do was not tenant fixtures, the structural fixtures, that I would live with the house when I'm living. And I needed to say, let's have an understanding. Are you ready to give me the value when I am leaving the said I'm not going to pay you? So I looked for an apartment ahead, and I left behind 7 months rent. That was my...
Yeah, but not a lot of persons have that ability to... So it's sometimes the argument is not about not knowing the law, but the applicability. Because you can go to your landlord. My colleague was just whispering an experience. You know, you go to your landlord. By law, I'm supposed to pay you 6 months, not 1 year. And the landlord says, it's my house. If you cannot pay me 1 year...
Well, we'll come to that. That now turns to economic exigencies. You need to make your decisions, right? In all of this, there is no public housing that is available for the teeming masses of the people in Lagos State. So what are you left with? You're left with private sector-driven housing. And what is private? Private sector is two people engaging themselves. What the law does is to provide the environment to play. But the terms and conditions, that is why in tenancy, you will discover that the terms of the tenancy vary from landlord to landlord, from tenant to tenant. In any event, some landlords don't even give an agreement at all. And some tenants will not even insist that I need an agreement in the first place. So at the end of the day, you leave yourself at the mercy of the terms of the landlord, right? If, for instance, I want to get an apartment and somebody said, you are going to be paying a non-refundable fee of so amount, I will say, put it in the agreement so that I know that this is the money you have received from me in consideration of my taking the apartment, so that when I want to leave, because it's not only in Nigeria that you do that, deposit on account of damages, but when you are leaving, at least my younger sister staying in the United Kingdom. Recently, when they were going to move from their apartment and her husband to a new apartment, they were able to get their refundable deposit just this year here.
But that's a different climb in Nigeria.
No, but it does happen here. I have had my money brought to me. Yeah, so it's not...
Have it documented. You are able to enforce it.
Okay, Mr. David, I want to talk to Mr. Osagie here now regarding damages that you spoke about. If you remember, there was a lady who was talking about certain damages in her house and who had to pay for it all. So there are those terms inside of the Lagos Tenancy Law, but who is supposed to pay for what? What is wear and tear? What is structural? What is tenant? Can you give us a bit of clarity regarding these?
Okay, thank you very much. So what the legal practitioner said is very key. Tenancy agreement is not a static document. It has some static guidelines, but it has a lot of flexibility. And that's why the courts, when you come to go to the courts, they will ask you, what did you guys agree? What they are trying to do is to enforce an agreement. In the absence of an agreement, what the court will enforce is what the provisions of the law says. However, what you are doing should not contradict what is in the law. Now, there is a situation where a landlord gives a tenant a property. Go, you are the only tenant, take over this entire thing. Everything about this house I have given to you is documented. So it means that everything about the property is under your custody. You've seen situations where some banks would take over a property, refurbish it. Everything, the responsibility is on the tenant. Now, but there are some little lines that one could actually say will be the landlord, in the sense of maybe the property is maybe it collapses. Now, what is that person supposed to do in that regard? But let me quickly draw the attention of the public to something critical. I worked with a son about 2 years ago, and he said something. We were working on a certain project, and he said, your document is not as strong as the integrity of the person you are signing with, first and foremost. Two, when the document now comes, that document you have is not enough to just have provisions. What will happen if something goes wrong must be documented. So people see tenancy agreement and they just see 1, 2, 3 pages sometimes. They just see 4 pages. And they say, okay, if there is maybe a wear and tear, it's going to be the landlord. Now the question is, how will the landlord fix it? When will the landlord fix it? If the landlord does not fix it, what happens next? So if I wait 14 days, what happens? So more experienced lawyers, what they now do is ensure that everything that is going to happen in that property is documented. And that's why, from my perspective, a tenancy agreement is a risk management tool from both perspectives, because the tenant is, and that's what I will always advise tenants, if you are going to look for any property, get an experienced estate surveyor and valuer to go with you, an experienced lawyer to work with you. Why? Because they can see through the fine details of the transaction and advise you, because you are still going to, you probably will pay a percentage of agency. So why not get somebody that will work for you and not somebody that is after a 10% or a 5%?
May I ask, I'm sorry, Felicity, I saw you just in there. I know you want to ask Mr. Odafi something, but I wanted to ask, inside of the Lagos Tenancy Law, where does the agent fall in? Are they necessary?
Agency is a choice. Let me say this for the benefit of the public. The mistake we make is that a landlord will appoint an agent. I will make you pay for the services of his agent. Who is an agent? An agent is somebody who represents your interest of the person appointing him, right? If, for instance, I have an asset and I said, Mr. Osagie, I need you to manage it for me. We have a management agreement between us, and he knows this.
Yes.
You sign a management agreement with the owner of the property. Is either you said, okay, as the manager, this is the source of my revenue. No, some landlords will agree with a property manager that they should build the management fee into the rent collected from the prospective tenant. In that sense, that agency agreement is not, in the real sense, separated from the tenant's from the value of the renter. It is built into it. Then there is a silent agreement between the estate management and the owner of the property to say a percentage of this comes to the property manager as agent to the landlord. But the common parlance in which agency is used in Lagos, and even generally, you mentioned Edo State. I am from Edo State. I go to Benin regularly. I had an assignment for 2 years from 2022 to this 2025, and I needed an apartment. And an agent will tell you, before I take you to the property, you pay me an inspection fee. And I said, I'm not paying you. I did it. So I eventually ended up staying in a hotel for the period that I needed to be there. So it is what you accept that is foisted on you.
True.
You must give yourself a choice.
The truth remains that those agents sometimes try to, what's the word now, intimidate you into doing...
Manipulate you.
Yeah, manipulate, that's the word,
both
actually.
you and the landlord. Yeah. They manipulate, but they assure the landlord, we can give you better... You know, some landlords will just say, this apartment, I'm giving it up for out for 250,000.
They'll say increase it.
They will tell them, no, this area, you can get. I have a godfather in Okera here, Oba. He doesn't give his property to an agent to manage. He manages it because he said, I don't want anybody's problem. It is my property. If I decide to take 100,000, it is my business. And he chooses who he wants. So agency is what has made agency very, very, very messy for everybody. Is that there are a lot of jobless people who just walk around, look for property. Even when the property is not given to them, they start marketing it for the purpose of earning a fee on it.
The economics
they pass the burden on to the tenant. The house I stay for, it's either you are staying in your own house or renting your office, or you are staying in your house in the house as rent. And there are people who have houses.
So the Lagos State Tenancy Law does not exclusively provide for
There is
agents.
a provision for agents.
Okay.
That, in that sense, it means that if, for instance, I want a property and I approach Mr. Osagie, say, I need a property, Osagie becomes my agent for the purpose of sourcing for that property. And I will pay Osagie for sourcing for that property for me. But if a landlord gives a property to Osagie as an agent, I would insist that I'm not the one that will pay Osagie his agency fee. All of these things are a question of negotiation.
All right.
It is what you accept that the law will enforce for you. And that is why he said agreement in anything is key. And that is why I said that don't hurry into any relationship. It's the same mentality that we also have towards marriages that are failing today.
All right. Let me go back to what he referenced. He said document is not as strong as the integrity of the people that sign it. You also said absence of an agreement. I think you said that absence of an agreement means automatic recall to the law. So if you don't have an agreement, the law will come in for you. I don't know who could take on this question. Other of you can actually. Rent control and the time that an increment is mandated by law, because you can move into my instance, I moved into an apartment and within 6 months I'm being told that the rent will be increased by 30%. And not even by 5%, 30%, you know, whether it's a strategy to get tenants to move or it's just something that is this allowed?
Yeah, look, some people demand for 100% increase.
So who's going to take this?
I think maybe, okay, you can take on and then you can add if you have something.
The Lagos Tenancy Law stipulates, right, that rent increment should be negotiated. Even in the agreement, you have to also ensure that you have it as a condition, as a term of the contract, that rent increment is going to be negotiated.
Okay.
Now, when you're also entering into a tenancy agreement, you also have to have an agreement or a clause that says that this rent is not subject to review for the first, let me say, 1 or 2 years. Those clauses, if you approach a lawyer, not a lawyer who is ready to take 10,000 naira from you to just put his seal on an agreement. We do a lot of things very, very wrong. A lot of my colleagues just say, oh, just bring it. Is it not my signature and my seal? They put it for you. And
yeah, but sorry to interject, yeah. You could have that in a written document as agreement, and then the landlord will tell you, now my house, the situation has changed. If you don't like it, move out.
No, that is where enforcement of your right comes in. Nobody's going to enforce your right for you except you insist on the enforcement of your own right. A tenant has a right to take a landlord to court that your increments or your conditions you are imposing on me, they are in breach of the agreement that we have. I ask the court to enforce it.
I need you to speak. We're told to wrap up, so I need you to speak quickly to this. Is there a possibility of rent control in Lagos, where you know that if you're renting in a certain axis, maybe you get a 1-bedroom apartment for $1 million max, and another location you can get it for 5? Is it possible to have that in Lagos? Does it even exist?
Okay, quick one. In just 30 seconds, I'll say something and I'll come back to this. So it is important to note that when we say agents, we have quacks. And like what is said, you see the people on the streets, have they gone to a formal environment to learn about real estate, about the legal part of real estate? Because what you are renting is not just the building, it's the interests you are taking a part of that interest. So I'm saying this to say that for tenants or prospective tenants, when they are looking for houses, one thing that has happened that has moved a lot of things, because we need to understand behavioral patterns. So I want to rent a place, and I come to him and ask for, I need a property, and he's working on it. And tomorrow I go to you, and I go to you. The next time he comes, oh, I've seen something for you. Then I tell him, I found something already.
You have moved on.
That cycle went on, and the agents said to themselves, you know what? Then the street guys, they said, you know what? I would not take you out if you don't pay my bills, because I'm incurring costs. Tomorrow you will call me that you've gone. So that part has to be regulated. Okay. So that you know that you are working for someone. In advanced economies, what happens is that you have an agent, you sign an agreement with an agent to do this for me, source for me, and I'll pay you this. You can even put a timeline. Please, I need this. Can you work for me in 1 month? And deliver. So now coming back to this, we need to understand that housing is from about a 3 perspective. You have the social, is a social good, and it's also an economic good, and it's an investment good. So the two, social and investment, they come together into economic. Now, social good for government, housing should be seen as like a welfare to the people. To say there are some people that cannot afford housing. So how can we make it affordable to them? There are some people who buy properties as investments, so such that that property investment is also competing with other types of investments like filling stations, like businesses, like recharge cards, whatever it is. There must be ROI. So when you then get to the point where the person is looking at an investment and he has put money into it based on not subsidized rates from government as regards production, what happens is that trying to cap it will disincentivize people from investing. So now what I say to people is housing is like what we were taught in school, business studies then. They say factors of production. You have land, labor, capital, entrepreneur. If you look at it from that perspective, you understand that after going through the land, labor, capital, can we say that petrol stations should be selling their petrol at 200 naira? You can see. People will shut down. We are not selling. Oh, we are not selling. I'm not renting. So what you now have is people roaming the streets of Lagos without homes because the person that has set up the rent control point has not provided alternatives enough that is competing with what we have in the place.
So this long explanation is that we cannot control prices.
No, not that we cannot control. Not that we cannot control, but what you can do is, what I'm saying is that you need to create an environment, policies that will drive people to cap their rentals. Because if you subsidize, the reason why you want to control rent is because you don't want it just ballooning up like that. Okay. But what you want to do is, what role am I going to play first in that value chain of production? Subsidizing maybe regularization of title, the cost of cement, the cost of iron production. At that point, by the time those things are subsidized, it gets to the market at a reduced price. Your influence, I am subsidizing it to you and I'm telling you, by the time you get to the market, this is what I want you to be able to sell. There are places around Ibejuleki, Moe axis that government can go in and talk to the people and say, you know what, this is this kind of subsidy we're going to run with you here. So and this is the long-range plan we're going to have.
All right, in 20 seconds, I'm told we're out of time.
But you can talk about that.
Well, you know, we run a free market economy. And a free market economy is to, government also tries as much as possible to make investors very comfortable that if they put money into your economy, they will get returns on investment. Then 2, properties are not all the same. 2 properties can be in the same location, the same design, but the quality of those properties are quite different. There are apartments that you enter that were built in the 80s. You feel more comfortable with those apartments than the ones that were just erected a few months ago. The quality of materials, the standard of maintenance and all of that, top notch, and you want to maintain them. So for those kind of properties, you know, when you are buying the product, you seek for the satisfaction. A lot of the time, that satisfaction has a value, and you cannot cap it.
Felicity, I just wanted you to tell just one last thing, and real quick, because we don't have any time, regarding increments. My landlord cannot increase above how many % each year? What?
I think it's subject to agreement.
Subject to agreement.
Subject to agreement.
Fantastic.
You must agree.
Gentlemen, thank you very much for your time. I wish we had more time.
I wish we had more time.
This is really an intriguing topic to discuss. Thank you for giving us your time.
Thank you very much.
So I'm being told that we're going to revisit this subject sometime soon. So if you stick around here, especially for Breakfast Extra, you might be lucky. You might just catch it that one time.